The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to have podcast alumni back to join us here, but with a different company. Marin Tchakarov is going to join us, and he is now the CEO and president of Fox Robotics. And Fox Robotics is doing some exciting things in the automated unloading of trailers, which, if you listen to the podcast, you know is a very exciting and passionate part of the process in the warehouse for me, because it's one of the most challenging and difficult things about the warehouse, I will say, is unloading and loading these trailers. And Fox Robotics has a solution that is addressing that. So we're going to learn more about that today, and we're going to check in with Marin here and see how things with Fox Robotics are progressing, some of their customers, and where their focus is going into the future as well. So, Marin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, Kevin. Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Great to get you back on the show and talk about this. Very interested to dive into this and learn more about what's going on with Fox. So why don't you kind of start, I guess, I gave a little intro there, I guess, on what Fox is doing, but why don't you give us kind of the real overview there and what it is that you guys are focused on?
Yeah, so we were founded in 2017 by a group of brilliant roboticists and AI and ML scientists with backgrounds from KUKA Robotics, Google X Robotics, and the like. The mission very steadfastly was to design and develop an autonomous forklift to handle what were back then and are continuing to be incredibly difficult set of problems to solve with automation, which is the highly unstructured, chaotic, manual, therefore, environment of the current and past shipping and receiving dock. Shipping and receiving dock has now been automated. It's probably the last bastion of automation or unautomated environments today. We didn't just sort of wake up one morning and say, gee, we forgot about the shipping and receiving dock. We've automated to a certain degree the rest of the warehouse and distribution center, but somehow forgot about the shipping and receiving dock. We haven't. We've always wanted to. It's just that it's by definition, and anybody in the industry and anybody off the street really that knows and has been in the shipping and receiving dock knows what that environment's like. It's incredibly chaotic in a way of like sort of this unpredictable vectors of movement of humans and machines doing a whole bunch of different tasks all at once. It is not moving goods down and up an aisle, or racking goods. That's a much more controlled environment compared to a shipping and receiving dock environment during a busy shift. So back to Fox and what we do, we steadfastly set out to automate the key functions of what takes place in a shipping and receiving dock today. And we started out with a more difficult one, which is the autonomous unloading of trailers. And we were extremely focused on bringing that solution to market. We were therefore very disciplined about not allowing ourselves to get distracted by other shining objects, such as, for instance, autonomous loading, ancillary functions like put away inside the warehouse. All of these things we wanted to put aside for the time being and really focus on one key aspect of automation on the dock and become great at it rather than good at many. And so brought that solution to market in 2019 on a proof of concept basis. We launched our first proof of concept vehicles in that time frame. We launched our first production vehicles, our first production robots in 2021. When today we have a fleet of about 110 across circa 55 sites. This is the part, Kevin, where I'll embellish a little bit and talk about not only the importance of bringing the solution to market with a strong product market fit to drive ROI for customers, but also in our robotics world that we play in, to put out those solutions, those incarnations of technology, what is obviously a cutting edge software, bleeding edge AI powered machine vision and software technology out into the real world, and to start that journey down a bathtub curve and crawl through, I don't know, several miles of broken glass, so to speak, over a few years,
Yeah.
to try and emerge on the other side of it, which is where we are today in terms of learnings from the real world. That's what really constitutes the vast majority of moat, the competitive moat for us and for anyone that wants to play in the space. There's just no way that you can envision, with brilliant people and otherwise, to envision all the edge cases and difficult environments that you'll be operating in customer settings. And so we did that back in 2021. History to date, we have pooled autonomously circa 4.6, 4.7 million loads today. Most loads are double stacked pallets, so that's probably nearly double the pallets. I don't have to tell you this, and perhaps much of the audience, that each and every pallet we move autonomously is a treasure trove of data for us. We have a dedicated data annotation team. So anytime we have a pool that degrades in performance for reasons that we need to go investigate, that data annotation team goes and reviews the logs, snaps pictures and images of the load. We now have upwards of 700,000 proprietary images of loads that have had historically degraded performance that we train our neural network and our algorithms on. So it creates that flywheel, that jet engine spooling up type effect of, bettering the performance of our product through this very extensive library of, images and assisted learning, therefore. And so it's a very, very powerful process, therefore, to go out there in a number of environments. I would say we serve today 4 verticals in no particular order. Those are retail, 3PL and logistics, consumer packaged goods, and food and beverage. And across those verticals, I mentioned we have 110 bots in fleet, exponentially growing, by the way. We're hitting that stride of major scale and mass adoption today. And so across that fleet, and of course, especially across the 55 or so sites that we're in, we cut in different ways as well. We're in, brownfield facilities, we're in greenfield facilities, we're in highly automated, essentially end-to-end, where we are providing that last piece of the puzzle of end-to-end automation in otherwise highly automated facilities with state-of-the-art ASRS, automated storage and retrieval systems in place. So we're spanning the whole gamut between virtually unautomated or partially unautomated brownfield sites all the way through to highly automated sites. And of course, we're cutting across ambient, freezer, and fresh facilities. So we have a very large platform of experience out there.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, such an interesting thing, like you said, and very, very noticeable. I think if you look at the market, as you said there, that, all these different aspects of the warehouse are getting automated, getting robotics, right? And then the doc is just kind of over here, like, show me some love, like what's going on, right? And, I think, now we're seeing that, there are several applications in the market that are trying to tackle these different things. And obviously you guys are having, pretty good penetration there with 110 trucks out there in operation. And I think it's important to clarify to the audience, right, that you guys are focused on pallet unloading strictly, right, versus like floor loaded containers, right? Because we see there's
Correct.
2 different types of unloading there at the dock. So I'm curious, I guess, in that regard, what was the decision there, or why was the let's tackle the problem of pallets versus like a floor unloaded container?
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes.
Yeah, the majority of product in most of the cases in these verticals that I mentioned comes on standardized pallets, 40 by 48 inch pallets. And so it's,
Right.
again, I'm extremely proud of the team in how obviously the technical brilliance is there, of the founding team. And that just needs to get called out. I'm incredibly proud of that. But also the focus and discipline of how we approach a problem that we're solving and distilling sort of in siphoning fashion that problem. And so we focused on the mass part of the market. I mean, we estimate that automating the shipping and receiving dock globally is a $78 billion opportunity with respect to total addressable market. Majority of the goods do travel and will continue to travel, irrespective, honestly, of any other and all other advents in terms of automation and robotics. Will continue to travel on standardized pallet for the foreseeable future. And so we will need, therefore, the interface to be moving goods on pallets. And so that was the reason for the focus. Look, I think we are very well on our way to build a dominant company that will, and again, I think I should mention to the audience here that the mission is to become the ubiquitous name for dock automation in the near term. So in the next couple of years, when you need to automate your dock, you're going to go to Fox Robotics. And so what does that entail? All functions on the dock. Autonomous unloading, autonomous loading. We just, by the way, launched with our third generation vehicle that we just started shipping a few weeks ago. Ancillary and sort of auxiliary functions to that, such as autonomously unload, drop the load into an inbound cell in a highly automated environments where there's an ASR system present, dropping into an inbound cell, dropping off onto a conveyor on another medium that like an AGV that would take the goods and rack them inside the warehouse, for instance. Pick up from an outbound cell, pick up from not only a staged area from a conveyor with respect to autonomous loading. Integration with WMS in some cases may be desired, especially with highly automated environments where loading and unloading need to happen at the same time. Different bots doing that, or a bot switching from autonomously unloading in the morning to autonomously loading on the next door in the afternoon, for instance. Fleet management support, that is to say, robots talking to one another in adjacency or just in general as a fleet at a customer site. These are all ancillary aspects that we're launching in parallel on this Gen 3 vehicle that we just started shipping into the world. And so, look, long-winded way of saying near-term focus, kind of almost in a concentric circles fashion, is autonomizing the dock, automating fully the shipping and receiving dock. It's going to be an incredibly difficult problem set, which is why today, if you walked into any shipping and receiving dock, generally speaking, it won't be much different than, I don't know, let's pick on a year in the 20th century, 1983. You'll see the manual forklifts. You'll see the goods on the floor. It'll be very similar from decades ago. And so automating that is the near-term mission. We're on a gliding path to stab a big flag of victory in that with scale. So with dominance in the next couple of years or so. And I mean, it wouldn't be any secret for me to share that we'll be looking at that time to expand in two categorically different fashions. One is geographically, to look at other geographies. So EMEA is a very attractive market. We have customers that want us there yesterday. And so we'll be expanding just about as quickly as we can, as we've reached meaningful scale in the US market. And so EMEA and Asia Pac in certain components of or geographies of Asia Pac is very attractive. And then, of course, we'll be expanding vertically into other functionalities. So this is finally answering the question as to capability to handle boxes or goods on slip sheets, capability to integrate vertically with other solutions and or provide other functions deeper into the warehouse in terms of automation. Though that'll be the time we'd be expanding from autonomous operations on the dock. But in the meanwhile, in the short run, in the next 2 to 3 years, the mission is to build a dominant organization that effectively by virtue of scale and experience becomes the ubiquitous player in the space. There will be others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And I think, it's great that you're so, I think, laser focused on that dock aspect, because you said, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned, not getting distracted by the shiny object, right? It's like, well, while we're trying to figure out the dock, well, we could do, pallet movement and stacking or something for you too, right? At the same time. But I think, being laser focused on that, I mean, is going to make that solution so much better and perfect it and get to that dominance that you're looking to get to there. So tell us a little bit about kind of how it actually works, right? So trailer pulls up to the dock. Is there some type of human intervention to get the process started? How does it recognize, how many pallets there are, or, what happens if there's a pallet that's leaning or something like that? How does the process actually work, and how does the robot itself start to work and start to unload that trailer?
Yeah, great. So as I jump into the answer here, maybe a quick overview of the technology
Sure.
itself, kind of at a high level. What we do today is we take a manual forklift and we upfit it with rather extensive additional hardware on it to make it an autonomous mobile robot and a collaborative robot at that. And so some of the key features on it involve a LiDAR system, which fuses in terms of information with 3D camera system. Through that sensor fusion, create a full 360 spherical in the third gen product, spherical 360. So think of it as having an eyes and all around, effectively to see the world around us in a dynamic fashion. And so not only obviously do we have the capability to, through AI powered ML, see and recognize, so singulate and recognize what a pallet is and what a pallet looks like and what a load looks like, but also to see obstacles on our path. It's important to mention that the reason why this automation was not possible until recently is because dynamic decision making is required for a chaotic environment like the shipping and receiving dock. When Timmy walks around with a cup of coffee and is distracted and looking backwards and not paying attention to where he's walking, and he's walking straight into a moving Fox AMR, we recognize Timmy. We don't recognize that Timmy is a human, but we recognize Timmy as a moving obstacle in our towards us, on vector towards us. And so when Timmy breaches the perimeter, which is usually somewhere in the 4.5 meter radius, we progressively start slowing down and stopping as Timmy steadfastly is walking towards us. And so same, in a similar fashion to, Johnny dropping, a set of pallets in our placement zone while our bot is inside the trailer unloading the next load. Will come out, the bot's going to come out, the bot's going to see that set of pallets that were erroneously in error put in our placement area, recognize those as an obstacle, replan real time. So replan its path real time, recompute where it's going to now place this next load, and continue on its merry path there, or it's to finish the placement. When he comes back, and let's say Johnny realized that those loads don't belong there, and came back and picked up the, let's say, 2 pallets that were obstructing. When we come back with the second or third load thereafter, the bot's going to realize that the obstacle's gone. It's going to replan back the original plan again and continue on that original path in terms of placing goods where the 2 pallets were. And so it's a dynamic planning system that works in the background that allows us to therefore react to a chaotic and ever so changing environment around us with humans and machines and goods. So that's a bit about the product and its performance. Launching it on site, all we need for the autonomous unload solution is 2 April tags, which are basically these large size QR code looking tags that are placed on either side, on each side of the dock door. We've created purposely the UI and UX on the machine such that it can be flipped into manual and driven just like a manual forklift. This is incredibly critical. Some of our competition made some foot faults in that venue, by the way, in terms of remote controlling the vehicle, which is, in our view, in our opinion, a terrible idea in a shipping and receiving dock real world situation. So the bot can be flipped into manual mode, which is how, a manual forklift driver or a forklift driver drives the bot in front of the dock door, opens the dock door, then flips the bot back onto auto mode, pushes the button and walks away. And off to the races we go with unloading that trailer. You mentioned unstable loads. This kind of goes back to the library of images that we've collected, the experience that we've gathered. We have a variety of recognition aspects beyond just recognizing what a pallet looks like and going and picking up a pallet. We look at the entire load. Is this a double stack load, single stack load? If it's a double stack load, we generally have, and we encourage our customers to enable tow pallet recognition or tow load recognition, in terms of clearance to the ceiling. And so therefore, the bot is cognizant of the fact that it's operating a tow load and it's not lifting it beyond certain parameters in order not to scrape the ceiling with that load, for instance. So there's a variety of singulation aspects to the ML behind the technology with respect to how we operate. And so leaning loads, spilled goods, pyramid configurations where you have two stacks, let's say the two single stack loads, and then another pallet sort of in between in a kind of a pyramid fashion. These are aspects where we effectively raise our hand and want a human to be involved because these are unstable loads to unload, for instance. Airbags, which are stabilizers, stabilizing sort of goods. Think of airbags as these like big, pillow-like looking, literally bags full of air that basically get shoved in between loads to stabilize the loads in transit in the trailer. We need a human. We recognize those. We see them. That causes the intervention because we need a human to go there and remove those obstacles. So on average, across our fleet today, we're about 95+% autonomous. Inversely, what that means is that there's like circa 5% or less intervention rates. In some of our best performing sites, we are approaching 98% autonomy, 97 and change percent autonomy today. And so basically that's roughly 1 to 2 interventions an hour between the average and the top, let's say 25th percentile of sites. So what that affords us, or what that affords the customer, is the ability to promote a human, if you will, or elevate a human into, that forklift driver now is elevated into a forklift supervisor, an autonomous forklift supervisor, and they can now supervise up to 6+ robots working at the same time because of that low intervention rate, right? So you could have up to 6 or more bots working on 6 adjacent doors and the human forklift driver overlooking those and clearing interventions as they may come.
Wow, that's a pretty nice ratio. I mean, essentially you're taking 6 forklift operators down to 1 in a sense, right? I mean, and being able to unload those 6 at the same time. Very interesting. So I guess how does the bot itself, if you're, I think you mentioned the April tag there, right? And the operator lines it up to the trailer that it's set to unload. But if there's another trailer like next to it, how does it not get confused between the different trailers, right, and go into the wrong one or something like that?
Yeah, so it localizes kind of in machine vision speak with respect to where it's operating, or SLAM system speak, so to say. It localizes with the aid of, that's why we need those April tags, in order for the bot to localize relative to that door, so that the door becomes its quote unquote North Star, right? So it knows where it is at all times, because it pings with the 3D cameras to those April tags and sees those April tags to localize that is its destination. And therefore the placement zone, for instance, in autonomous unloading is outside that area. directly.
Got it.
So it doesn't wander left or right from that.
Mm, interesting. So, and then from, I'm sure when you talk to potential customers, they're always curious, how long does it take to unload the trailer on average? If you had a full
Yeah.
trailer, 26 pallets or 24, I mean,
Yeah.
how long does it take to strip that trailer?
Yeah, it takes usually circa 45 minutes to autonomously unload a trailer. You're right, the load count is somewhere in the 24, 25 or so. So it could be up to 48 or plus, pallets circa there if they're all double stacked, for instance. So it takes us about, again, makes no difference whether they're double stacked or single stacked.
Mm-hmm.
We measure our throughput in loads, unloaded, whether single or double. And so, yeah, our throughput on average is somewhere in the range of 25 pph pulls per hour. And again, with some of our highest performing sites, we're circa just shy of 30, 28, 29 pulls per hour.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Today, it's important to mention that, and that question oftentimes comes like, gee, what's the human parity? And I kid, but I say a reckless human can unload probably in a half an hour or better, the same trailer. In other words, they can probably unload at a speed of 50 pph or so, pulls per hour or so. The issue with human-driven processes is, I'm sure many of the audience and folks out there are aware of, it's the throughput or the performance is very spiky. It's a lot of hurry up and wait by virtue of the different throughputs or ceilings for different processes within a distribution center or a warehouse. For instance, a manual forklift driver can unload at that speed and then just kind of go to the next store and finish as quickly as they can. But the real limitation to overall throughput is the speed or throughput through which those loads are placed inside the warehouse. So the put away function is oftentimes the limiting factor. And that throughput, by virtue of distance that has to be traveled and racking involved, by the way, with a different vehicle, that's usually a reach truck that picks up the pallets and takes them inside. That's usually limited to somewhere in our experience in the range of, teens to maybe very low 20s pulls per hour. And so we're safely and very well beyond that with respect to throughput. And so essentially what we do is we basically stabilize a set of operations with very consistent, reliable throughput and performance without any spikes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, from my personal experience working in operations, I mean, that's pretty on spot with, how much it would take for the human. And you make a great point there about, it's one thing to get the pallets off the trailer and onto the dock, but then, how quickly are you clearing that dock to be able to make space for the next trailers coming? And you have limitations there as well. So very interesting. And I'm curious too, I mean, I saw on the website, one of the things that is highlighted is that you don't need to have any type of really system integration from like a WMS perspective or something like that. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, why is that important to highlight? And if you did want to have some integration, could you have some integration, or is it just the way it is?
Totally. Yeah. So the reason that's important usually is because of speed of value add. So I mentioned the April tags being needed to, in terms of dock door recognition. That's basically it, Kevin, when we show up at a site. So we are usually up and running circa within an hour. Doesn't mean that we leave after that hour. A deployment usually lasts somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks, depending on complexity and number of bots that we're deploying at a site. But we're spending that time fine-tuning setup aspects as well as extensively training the personnel involved, all shifts involved and such. And so, but it's important to mention that we're up and running, driving value for this customer after the first 60 minutes of setup. And so connectivity is imperative. So we need to be connected, obviously, for the bots to work. Our backup is we have our own 5G on each and every bot. So whether we just operate with that, and it's multiple carriers, by the way, that are supporting us, such that there's never a dead zone in any given environment, or we go on a customer's Wi-Fi network with the respective adherence to security protocols and such. But these are usually the requirements for us to get up and running, particularly with autonomous unloading. And again, in most environments today, which are some aspect of a brownfield being automated to a certain degree, but not fully, where we effectively are the last piece of this end-to-end automation puzzle. In those environments, we're autonomously unloading a trailer and placing the goods on the floor, on the dock floor in front of that door. And then they're generally being put away manually by a human with a reach truck inside that distribution center or warehouse. And so that probably represents the majority of the use case out there for autonomous unloading today. And so that is why no WMS integration is required. Now, can we do it? Absolutely. We're actually on pace to do one with a key major customer of ours as we speak.
Okay.
WMS integration is desired when we start combining the full suite of functionality. So like I mentioned earlier in the chat, when we have autonomous unloading as well as autonomous loading of trailers. WMS integration is needed or desired, particularly with respect to autonomous loading, because sequence for loading matters.
Interesting. Yeah. I think very interesting there. And I love that you can get it up and running in 60 minutes. I mean, I think that goes a long way, especially when you look at, I think, and I'm curious maybe what you think about this too, but I think we're at the point where, the adoption of automation and robotics is starting to get and penetrate a little further into like the more medium-sized businesses as well, and who maybe haven't had any automation or robotics yet, but having solutions that can get up and running quickly, right? I think is more attractive to them, where they don't necessarily have the same resources that some of these other much larger companies have to do a lot of testing and proof of concept and all these things. Like they want stuff that's going to hit the ground running, which I think is really interesting that you've been able to accomplish that too as well. So very interesting stuff. So tell us a little bit about who you're working with now. I know I saw the big news earlier this year, right? That you guys are working with Walmart, right? Some people may have heard of Walmart before, right, out there. So definitely a big customer for sure. So tell us a little bit about who you're working with right now, and kind of how that's been going, and what type of kind of impacts, positive results they've seen.
Yeah, let me, in answering the question, or sort of in commenting on this, go back a bit on the journey so far. And so I provided some stats earlier in the conversation. Fleet size circa 110. We're at about 55 sites to date. So if you did the quick math of like, okay, gee, what's your average bot count per site? It'll obviously be a simple math of 2 per site on average.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be terribly far from, where we are, if you think of it as a snapshot, or as a, kind of take an account of a single point in time. But it is reflective of the long journey behind us. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is it's a rear view mirror look of us historically. The journey in terms of adoption since 2021 has been one of, let's go find places where we can add value and experience different situations in different environments, so we can learn and better the product accordingly. And so that has very much been the journey. And so therefore, if you think about kind of the slope of that curve, it's been gradual, right? Since 2021, it's been gradual. I'm not throwing shade on it. We're growing at a CAGR of 150+%. So we're nearly between doubling and tripling every year. But that ends up being gradual compared to what we're facing, which is basically an exponent in terms of growth. So we're at that inflection point today. And I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is one of, you don't get to this inflection point. You don't get to the monopoly board go without, to collect the $200 and proceed, without having that critical experience in real world settings across multiple places and sites and customers. And you need to have that diversity of experience in order to fine-tune your solution, in order to then be ready, therefore, with a matured solution for mass adoption. And so this is the very inflection point we're at today. We're at the point of mass adoption. Now, you mentioned Walmart. We're incredibly proud of this relationship we have with Walmart. We've been with Walmart in some fashion or another since 2020, whether in POC or in production units later on.
Okay.
Walmart doesn't wake up one day and decide out of on a whim to partner with organizations. So Walmart's an incredibly sophisticated organization that's contemplative and methodic in their decisions. And so we're extremely proud and humbled by the fact that we were chosen as the autonomous forklift automation partner for them to work in an ensemble with what they're doing with organizations like Symbotic and Vitron in terms of ASRS automation across their facilities. And so look, it's a massive scale opportunity for us ahead. I will point you to a story that Walmart did on us in our automation with one of their forklift drivers, Jose. I think that came out sometime in the April or May timeframe of this year. It gives a very warm, human-centered view of automation. So the automation through the eyes of the operator.
Interesting. Yeah. And we'll be sure to link to that at thenewwarehouse.com as well in the blog post. So very interesting stuff with you here, Marin, and obviously, getting a lot of traction and very excited to see how this continues to grow. And I will say I was very surprised. I'm teaching a student this semester, and she had an internship over the summer, and which was involved with a Fox Robotics deployment at a company. So very interesting to see how you guys are continuing to get penetration into the market and having that focus on something that, as we mentioned, is been traditionally neglected a little bit, or a little bit of a puzzling challenge for people to try and figure out, and seeing some real success there. So really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about Fox Robotics. If people are interested in learning more about Fox Robotics, or maybe giving it a try at their facility, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Come on our website. We're very, very proud of the data and the stats that we have. Please check us out on our website, or ping me or our PR team directly, particularly with respect to commercial interest. We're extremely proud of what we've built.
Absolutely. And I can tell by the way you talk about it. So very exciting stuff. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Marin, thank you very much for joining me on today's show.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.